It's really great to see all your faces. We're really excited for this piece of our emerging practice series today. I've met many of you, but I haven't met everyone. And so, just for those I haven't met yet, I'm Jessica Wilkinson, and I'm an economic development researcher at RTI International. And at RTI International, we run the community of practice for the Build Back Better Regional Challenge grantees. We call it the Building Better Regions Community of Practice. And we have just been so excited about this presentation that we're about to do today. This presentation today is part of our Emerging Practice series, and it's where we really showcase the work of regions who are part of the community of practice. We call it the Emerging Practice series. It's not necessarily like, you know, tried and true best practices. We know, these are practices that people are developing as we are working on these projects together. And it's an opportunity for people to learn from the field from our community of practice members. We have about 30 or 40 minutes of content today, followed by questions. So please be ready to ask those questions. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Western New York. This presentation is about building for the long haul. We're going to be talking today about funding models that free up implementers to do work. We're going to be talking about aligning funding from public, private, and philanthropic funders. We're going to be talking about lessons learned from their journey so far. So we're going to hear from partners who are part of the Western New York Advanced Manufacturing Cluster. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tom Ulbrich, who's president and CEO of Goodwill of Western New York, Randy Murphy, who's the VP of Human Resources and Workforce Development for Goodwill of New York, Western New York, and Laura Cabral, who's the CEO of the Center for Regional Strategies. And they work to develop strong relationships, coordinate collaborative funding, support implementation that maximizes outcomes of the partners that they work with. And so with that, I'm just going to pass it on to start the presentation, and I'll come back when it's time for questions. So thanks, y'all.
Awesome. And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, Jessica. We're excited to be here today and excited to share Western New York's story. And I think as we've worked through some of the Build Back Better meetings that we've had, community practice meetings, one of the things that we're all often talking about is how do we sustain our work? How do we sustain this significant investment from the federal government and make it sustainable and actually be able to grow our communities because of the investment? And we often, when we're together, talk about that a lot. So we thought we would share today Western New York's story and Goodwill. And Laura, if you could just move ahead. Goodwill Western New York is one of the funded members from the Build Back Better Regions competition. And the story we want to talk about today is the fact that we were not fully funded, as many of us probably weren't with our original applications, but how we stayed together from that early process of applying, obtaining funding for pieces of it, and then how we worked together by working closely with New York State, with Laura Cabral leading us, and how we built this coalition in the community and how we're moving forward to sustain our work, bringing together philanthropy, federal funding, and state funding. So Goodwill Western New York, most people have Goodwills in their community. Our particular Goodwill, we focus on workforce programs, mostly around education, training, and career services, in getting people on career paths in advanced manufacturing and technology. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our great partners and leaders from our community that we asked to join us today, and that is Laura Cabral.
So just a little bit about the Center for Regional Strategies and the role that we play in this sort of collaborative model that we've been building here in Western New York. And it really was building and sustaining community wealth. So in the end, it's really economic development in terms of how do we think about growing household income. So we focus on 3 core pillars of economic development. So we think about placemaking, workforce, and small business all together. We always think about those things together because really in the end, economic development is all about increasing household income. So placemaking is about attracting and keeping great talent and companies that provide those jobs. Workforce is really about who is the talent and how do we have people increasing their potential wages and their household income through those wages in the workforce development work that we do, and how do we make sure that industry is feeding the curriculums as we're training people. And then thinking about small business, which is just another way to grow household income, really thinking about the revenue base and the incredible additive that small business contributes to the economy. So a lot of our jobs, especially in our region, come from small business. So how do we think about growing the small business capacity? So our job at the Center for Regional Strategies is to build the trusted relationships. When we think about these coalitions, you're all part of coalitions. It's very difficult work. And one of the things that we found in the sort of intermediary role is really digging in to say, it's someone's job to keep the wheels on a coalition and to keep it collaborative. So how do we keep building those trusted conversations and build those strategies together and, you know, sort of assess and measure over time and tweak and problem solve as we need to go. So really listening to the community's priorities, the partners' priorities, building on those strengths and thinking about those things together, and then designing a portfolio of strategically aligned initiatives that really maximize those outcomes. How do we keep people in doing what they do best and making sure that they have all of the resources to do those things and to really advance one collaborative strategic portfolio as well as doing what they do best as individual organizations. So that's our job, is to sort of look across all of those things, to go to the funders for sort of multi-year collaborative strategy. So we do try to match up public and private dollars. Government tends to be good at certain pieces of funding. So we try to go to philanthropy and corporate sponsors and say, how do you fill in the gaps on things that government can and can't do? So we build one collaborative model, multi-year. We try to do at least 3 years. 5 years is always our aspiration for these collaborative models. So just in the model building, we use those pillars as our sort of economic drivers. We work with the community to develop the portfolio, and we have funders at those tables so that they understand the process that was used. And we partner with the community-based organizations who are doing the implementation. So you always have partners at those tables, again, doing what they do best, not in fundraising and survival mode, but truly in implementation mode. And then we do, you know, a lot of the problem solving sort of as we grow together as a collaborative. So, and then once the portfolio is established, we track it and monitor it over time. So we do a lot of the reporting across the collaborative and really think holistically and think about how do we continue to advance that strategy as we go. So just a couple of examples of the types of models that we've worked on where we're aggregating these public and private funds in a multi-year construct. So we did an initiative called Eastside Avenues, which was really focused on commercial corridors and the small businesses along those commercial corridors and anchor places that we were investing in. Regional Revitalization Partnership focuses, that was on the east side of Buffalo. Regional Revitalization Partnership took that model, which has, again, public and private funding in it. So public funding did a lot of the bricks and mortar capital, and philanthropic funding helped all the community-based organizations that were doing the program work within those same physical places. So Regional Revitalization Partnership went to Niagara Falls, East Buffalo, New York, and Rochester, New York. So we kind of scaled up and started to think more holistically as a region within a broader geography. Open Forum Springboard looked at how to support the organizations that support small businesses. That was mostly philanthropic dollars. We have a competition called Springboard that also looks at how those entrepreneur support organizations and business support organizations can really scale up and reach even more businesses as they grow. And then the aspiration, and what we're talking about today, is the Manufacturing and Tech Workforce Coalition, which has a fundraising goal of 27 million. We've raised about 19 out of that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So just to give you perspective on, these are all different geographies, different constructs of funders. Again, always government, philanthropy, and corporate at those tables. We're always trying to get them to work together. But it all aspires to small businesses, entrepreneurs, really building those ecosystems, the employers who are actually driving the jobs themselves, building that inclusive workforce, and really who are the training partners when it comes to industry and building up workforce. So how do we build on the assets that we have? So who are we helping? We're helping those small businesses who aspire to grow. So again, that's a feeder for the economy. Really picking those historic sort of key anchor places that if the transformation doesn't happen in those places, the economy doesn't shift. It's partially a mindset that happens within revitalization, but it's also a key sort of economic driver of a neighborhood or a commercial corridor context. Commercial building owners who are looking to improve their properties along those corridors, helping the businesses along those corridors and within the broader ecosystem. And then the employers and trainers in manufacturing and tech. So we were very strategic about how we thought about the sectors that we wanted to do. Those are good paying jobs. Those are growing industries for us in our economy. So we wanted to stay focused on sectors. It's very easy to get very broad in workforce. So we wanted to roll up our sleeves and dig in on really a deeper dive on manufacturing and tech, and then really helping those individuals who are ready to make better wages and increase their skill sets. So we have this collaborative approach. Our job is to connect those dots. Our job is also to find the investment in the anchors and infrastructure that really lead to visible change. People have to see change as well as feel it. So finding those placemaking moments that are really valuable to a community, and then thinking about how to build up those not-for-profits to make sure that their capacity is truly there to implement in the best ways possible and reach as many people as possible. So it's really an ecosystem approach that aggregates those funders and the partners to really align around one key strategy together. And then we want to create models that can be replicated in other places. Every region has their own set of contexts and ecosystems, and we're conscious of that when we partner with other regions. But it really is intended to document and sort of build the model together so that we can learn from each other as well as reflect on the lessons with other people as they're trying out their own coalition work. So we build it through the stakeholder engagement. We have very detailed listening sessions with community people and people who are already implementing this type of work. It's the people who live it and breathe it and know it best that help us really inform how we build these programmatic approaches, how we choose the investments that are being made, and then building one strategic alignment of portfolio and then advancing that over at least 5 years at a time. So these are just some examples. So we did Eastside Avenues, again, which had commercial districts and anchors piece, Workforce Coalition, which has, we'll talk about today, which has sector councils and training partners, Springboard, which focused on business support organizations, and Regional Revitalization Partnership that does all of those things across 3 geographies. So just an example of the types of funders that we have. You see there's a mix of banks, government, philanthropy, other corporate sponsors, and then we have lots of not-for-profits and other partners of all different scales at these tables with us, actually doing the implementation across these different kinds of initiatives. So CRS is the Center for Regional Strategies piece is to sort of keep all of those strategies moving in one collaborative direction to help to keep the funding going and making sure that the funders are involved and understand the reporting. I think it's really important for us to be very honest with funders. We are sort of brutally honest about what we're learning as we go. keeping them sort of with us in that, in the learning what it means to really advance these things together and the resources that it truly takes over time. So when we look at the collective impact, when you start to aggregate these things, it can be very powerful. So we've had 23 public, private, and philanthropic partners who have invested over 400 million across those initiatives that I just mentioned. We're collaborating on larger geographies of Western New York and Greater Rochester. We've helped more than 40 community-based organizations. Again, so Eastside Avenues, it went through its first 5 years and became regional revitalization partnerships. So we're now in 7 years with some of the organization partners that we've been working with. And then finding those key transformational anchors that we're working on that people have been dreaming about for a long time, and how do we transform those places? And then tracking, learning, and growing and reflecting on what we're learning as we go. So it's really all about changing the economy, the trajectory of the economy, really focused on household income, great places for great people and great businesses, capital that goes to those small businesses for growth, and the training that leads to better paying jobs. So I'm just going to turn it over to Tom just to talk a little bit about the Workforce Coalition. We'll talk a little bit more about the structure of the coalition and what we've accomplished and what we're learning. Great,
thank you, Laura. So now as we sort of start to dive into the specifics around the coalition, that this funding was a catalyst for our community. And I think one of the interesting things is the process of applying, the process of working together, help from ESD in New York State to bring us together. This process has really brought us together with a focus on, as Laura said, not just creating jobs, but creating jobs that are careers in advanced manufacturing and technology, and careers with upward mobility that lead to wealth generation. That's conceptually what we're doing here. And workforce development, of course, we all know is a key economic development driver, and it plays a crucial role in fostering regional economic growth and development. And as we move through the next couple slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about the industries and that we chose to focus on. So the workforce development was certainly an important strategic direction, as I just said, and it makes sense, right, for all of us to invest in a well-trained workforce that ensures that businesses can stay in our community. Those businesses are needed to drive innovation. Workforce development helps increase productivity and ultimately helps Western New York remain competitive, not just in the US, but competitive in a global market. So one of the things Laura mentioned earlier was the workforce pipeline, and thinking about how do all the pieces fit together with the partners that we're going to share in the coalition. And if I think about where does Goodwill fit specifically, Goodwill's work is largely what I would almost refer to as pre-pipeline work. So we do a lot of work identifying individuals that are ready for a potential career that maybe had not had opportunities before. So we're able to help not just Goodwill, but everybody involved, bridge the skill gaps, making the region more competitive. And again, these programs, like all of our programs, create educated and skilled workforces. And we're going to talk a little bit more when Laura gets into the actual coalition about how we can leverage that and attract additional investment. So we have 2 target sectors now, which is, I think this is the beginning where we can talk about the evolution of where we started. So the Build Back Better Regions application was around advanced manufacturing, but so we focused on advanced manufacturing. It's a key driver in our community, and we have some interesting challenges with retirement cliffs on the horizon, the graying of the workforce. There's good paying jobs where the average wage is $70,000, and we have a large amount of jobs posted that are not going filled. So the need is there for this sector for sure, and that was our original sector. And then we've also have a need in our community to develop our tech sector so that we can keep people in our community and support the emerging tech economy that's developing here also. We do have a lot of universities, and one of the partners in the coalition Laura will talk about is University of Buffalo. So how do we all work together to develop those tech skills, keep graduates from universities in our community, and again, give people access to higher paying opportunities where the average wage is $83,000 plus. And again, tens of thousands of tech job postings that are out there. And it's been a little bit since I looked at this data, but I think one of the interesting stats are when we look at in our community, the need for these two sectors and the need for training people. We, on average, 2 years ago, had almost 47 days to fill any one of these jobs if they were posted. And it was costing employers an average just for recruiting of almost $5,000, not counting onboarding or anything else, just the cost of recruiting to fill those positions. So again, that's why we focus in those areas. So I'm going to turn this back over to Laura to talk specifically about the Western New York Coalition, who is led by Stephen Tucker from Northland Workforce Training Center. And she'll talk about this coalition. And I'm excited for you to hear this because it's a robust group of people that we've been able to bring together in our community, from funders to trainers to employers, all around the table at the same time. The last time we had a meeting together, I'm going to guess here, but I want to say we probably had 70 people in the room, which is really, really fantastic. So Laura, I'll turn this over to you now.
So we wanted to build a coalition that was very roll up your sleeves. So we've been studying the workforce development ecosystem here in Western New York for a long time. So we started in 2011 really thinking about how do we think about pipeline issues, how do we think about industry needs, as well as how to fill the skills gap and increase wages for people. So we had a lot of early conversations to say, does industry, do the curriculums that we have with the training now feed what industry actually needs? And when we would get people together in the room, industry would peripherally say, no, those are the wrong curriculums. And trainers would say, well, no one talked to us about what those curriculums should be, so we think we're doing okay. So when you try to get them together and say, we have to have a conversation about this, the curriculum doesn't seem to match up with what our local industry really needs. We needed to have more honest conversations with each other about what training was really representing and what industry was, really needed from the skills that were coming out of these curriculums. So we wanted to have a very concerted roll up your sleeves effort that said, we want to have those honest conversations with each other. And our job is to place as many people out of those training programs as possible. So there are a lot of great workforce training programs that don't really necessarily track people over time. So they consider it an aspirational goal to graduate people, and they consider that the check the box moment. But what we really wanted was to see people placed in jobs and then really monitor over time what it meant to track people. How did the job go? Did they have the right skills? Was the curriculum right? Was the work environment a good match for the person? And when barriers do come up, how do we address those barriers together as a community? So we wanted to have a very sort of hardcore group that was dedicated to that kind of exercise together, and really having industry squarely at the table and employers really honestly having conversations with the trainers about the pipeline build. So our goals really are about aligning education with industry and making sure the curriculums are right, facilitating those career pathways for individuals who really want to be in those fields, and then providing the local businesses with the right pipeline. It's all about placing as many people in jobs that are a good fit as possible with the right skills. So just an example of the types of coalition programs that we have in manufacturing and tech. So you see there's, different coalition members who have very different, curriculum. The other thing that we wanted to do is not have too much overlap, right? So all these organizations Some of these are community colleges. Some of these are not-for-profits. Some of them are private colleges. So we wanted to have them compare what they're teaching and who their target audiences are, and make sure that we are sort of comparing notes and saying, are we trying to do the same thing? Are there 4 programs that are all trying to do the same thing, all at different cost differentials? So we wanted to have more comparative note taking and sort of learning and thinking and doing together as a group. So the coalition is designed to help employers as well as job seekers, and then really have a very solid match between the training and education and industry. So this is just sort of who's with the coalition. So we have the pipeline builders. So there's, we've got the employers squarely at the table for both manufacturing and tech. So these are employers who, again, are ready to invest time and resource into what it means to build a coalition like this, knowing that there's a big ecosystem of training providers and pipeline developers and workforce development boards and workforce investment boards, all really, feeding the pipeline together. So if we're not coordinated around those things, we're just not as effective. And we've seen that happen many times where if people are too siloed in the approach, we are sort of tripping over each other. Everyone's chasing the same funding, and we're just not as high impact as we could be. So we do have, a very small team who stays dedicated to the intermediary function of this. So Stephen Tucker serves as our executive director as well as the CEO of Northland Workforce Training Center. So he came from a collaborative model building background from Cincinnati. So he already sort of had this kind of approach in mind when we initiated his leadership here. And then we have senior project people. And then we have a research team that works with us at the University of Buffalo Regional Institute, who does all of the tracking of the data, helps with the reporting, helps assess, our progress over time, and helps us do problem solving when barriers come up. So where things stand today, we've got the coalition leadership. So we launched, it was about a little over a year and a half ago. And we had that strategic direction and the lens. It's always a learning curve, right? So, you start with a coalition of the willing, you build these infrastructures together. It doesn't have an overly cumbersome governance. There's not a lot of, sort of boards and voting. It really is designed to be an experimental roll up your sleeves kind of initiative. We have about 45 employers. That list is always growing. We've got the training providers, and we coordinate with the pipeline developers and other sort of earlier phase trainers that we're thinking about. And we have very active engagement with each other in those roll up your sleeves moments where we're trying to build the right programs, learn from each other's strengths and weaknesses, and help each other have collective impact. So it's really focused on the alignment of training, and then our job at Center for Regional Strategies with the team who leads the coalition is really making sure that funding is there for the implementers to stay engaged, to keep the programs going, to learn from those programs, and to keep the funders engaged in the longer term. So we have a lot of communication tools with each other and a lot of ways that we express what the coalition is doing, as well as studying the labor force. So we're always looking at market analysis. There's usually a lag in the way that data works. So it's qualitative and quantitative data. You can study the labor market all day, but in the end, you have to be talking to industry about what they're actually experiencing and what the most current job openings really are and what the needs they see emerging as employers. So it's really about really strong data, but it's qualitative and quantitative. And then really just looking at the impact that we're having and how we can have the right level of reporting to reflect on what we're learning and how to share that with other people. So our job in that is the strategic planning and program development, really being there for the leaders who are doing this hard work and being the support underneath that. We're sort of the wind beneath the wings of people doing the incredible work that they're doing every day. We lead the research and the reporting that it takes to sort of evaluate and talk to funders about the impact that we're having. And really the communications piece. So we do a lot of storytelling. We're going to do even more of that. We do videos and written stories about the graduates that are coming out that are connecting with the jobs. It's very important for people to see themselves and see the opportunities that these jobs really represent. So the storytelling of the impact that the trainers are having, as well as some of the participants who have graduated from the programs and their life experience in the job when they get there, especially over time, is a powerful piece of what we're trying to do. So we've launched something called an innovation fund. So this is philanthropy we are trying to promote employer engagement in funding, which is a huge challenge I'm sure everyone has experienced. It's hard, when employers have great programs, they're not used to sort of financially investing. How do we stimulate that kind of thinking as a community? So we built an innovation fund with philanthropy, which is matching funds. So employers have to put some funding into the programmatic approach. And it's meant to be very flexible funding that can innovate very quickly when employers have needs that are urgent and potentially short term, so that you can build a very flexible program that meets the demands of industry as needs emerge. But the idea is to be catalytic in that funding, that employers have to be financially contributing, and it's a matching fund. So we want to keep employing strategically expanding our employer partnerships. Really, they are the drivers because they have the jobs and they should be driving the curriculum. So we're going to keep building that infrastructure. It takes real trust to build that. Industry is always a little bit skeptical of workforce programs. So what does it mean to sort of meaningfully build a curriculum together and innovate around what they really need? And then evaluating the needs that we have and how those things are emerging and growing. And seeking the right funding as we sort of learn how much things truly cost over time. So we think a lot about the lessons that we've learned. There are lots of them. So I think it sounds very polished when we talk about it as a coalition, and we're incredibly proud. I get to work with incredible people every day. But we have learned, that not every organization is built for this kind of collaborative work. Collaboration, it costs, it also pays off, but it is time and resource for organizations who already have lots of things to be thinking about. So I think you have to be invested in the same North Star and mission, and some organizations have worked out and some others haven't. So we just wanted to be honest with the fact that we've had trial and error there. So we are consistently documenting what we're learning so that we don't forget. It's very easy to sort of say, well, everything's better now, but we forgot the tweaks that we made over time. So we're very consistently documenting that. Our role as an intermediary is really problem solver. So as things emerge, as we learn things, how can we interject and be helpful? Sometimes it's about funding, but other times it's about pursuing policy changes or program tweaks. So really, our job is to sort of help people navigate that. I think the older I got, the more I realized that we just have to find those North Star players who are really driven by the same thing. And you can't really sort of duke it out. Coalition work is incredibly hard. If people aren't invested, you waste a ton of energy sort of trying to convert people and, maybe, duking it out over the core mission. That is just, the work is too hard to be doing that. So just really finding a cadre of the willing and moving forward and sort of ignoring the rest. We can hear each other out, but if we're not really guided by the same sort of guiding principles, it makes it pretty tough to advance. Data is great, but it can also paralyze you. So we try, we want to study things, we want to do the research, there are best practices, we are sort of, monitoring over time, but you can't really let it hold you up so much that you're afraid to experiment and sort of push forward. Some of the best data that we have is actually reflection on hard things that we maybe tripped up on. So I think that's part of the data analysis and collection that we want to do. And you just don't want the numbers to feel overwhelming and paralyze you into a place where you don't take action. So I think that's just a really important piece for us to remember. This collaborative funding, when you can match it up and put those puzzle pieces together where funders really are doing what they're good at and they're buying into one unified portfolio, it's easier for them and it's easier for the collaborative, right? So funders often have to navigate all those different puzzle pieces for themselves, and they're trying to do due diligence and sort of figure out all of the organization, how all these organizations are related to each other. Many of you probably have heard funders say, well, we mapped the ecosystem. They'll spend a huge amount of resource doing that as funders, and we want them more on the other end of it, which is funding the implementation. So we as communities, if we can do the hard work for them and aggregate around one unified portfolio, it just makes it easier on the funding side to really help them make decisions collectively with us. And we just have to acknowledge that economic change takes years, not months. That's part of, we have amazing partners in Empire State Development, who's the economic development engine for New York State. And, we were blessed to have Build Back Better. And we have the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation, who also partners with us on that work. They are very patient about what it means to do this kind of experimentation, to advance this kind of work, and knowing that economic development takes years, not months. So a lot of funders like to do 1 year at a time. And having partners who understand that it just doesn't work that way, that kind of change just doesn't happen at that kind of pace, and people who are sort of willing to stick with it for the longer term is a really important piece to think about. So just looking at our sort of final themes, it's leveraging those funding opportunities. Sometimes we have these once in a lifetime moments, good and bad, right? We're all living through different eras of things. So things like ARPA was like an amazing time of potential funding opportunity that was once in a lifetime. Sometimes locally you have once in a lifetime opportunities, and being ready to capitalize on those moments by having these collaborative strategies all together is an amazing thing to be part of. So you want to have that with coordinating the efforts across things. And again, someone whose job it is to really look across things is a really important piece of the equation. And then you will find those high impact moments and sort of have that strategic implementation where you're making a big difference. Those partnerships can, Tom is a person that I probably talk to every day. I think thinking and doing and having partners that you truly trust and can build something meaningful together is really just a powerful way to get things done. We also, have gone through all the bumps and bruises together and as a collaborative, and having that trust is a really important piece of things. So being willing to experiment and learn, and sort of not being afraid to fall every once in a while and learn from those times, but still persevere and move forward is a lot of what we've learned over the last few years.
Hey, Laura, I just wanted to double down on a couple of things that you said before we go into questions. One, I think it's really critical. You mentioned about our funders and their willingness, use the word experimenting, but I'll just use the word innovation. And I think we're in a time now where with rapidly emerging technologies, the workforce is changing so quickly. I think one of the things that our coalition does really well and our funding partners support very, very well is the concept of iteration and living through this iterative process and finding out this does work, this doesn't work, or we need to tweak this, or an employer needs us to change one of the trainers change a program. I think that's really, really critical today, that people approach this work with an iterative process and not bouncing all over the place, but taking 2 steps forward, measuring, checking the data, listening, and then kind of adjusting as needed. I think that's critical. And that doesn't always happen with funders because they're often, there was a grant written, this has to be bum, bum, bum. And I get it, but this type of work, I think, to do well in today's world, has to be innovative. And the last thing I would just add is, um, what I have found really interesting, having done a lot of collaborative work in my past that didn't work well, this collaboration in our community is working really well. And I think one of the reasons is, again, goes back to the funders and the fact that they're leveraging dollars with each other and connecting sources together. And there's a large amount of money which really becomes a catalyst for us to stay with the program, to work together. And I hate to say it's like a carrot, but it is like a carrot for people to work together and think about how our programs interact with each other in order to have access to that funding so it's spent properly. And I will stop there, Jessica.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Laura. For folks who were joined a little bit later and maybe didn't get to hear the introductions, I just want to say, yeah, thank you to Laura, who's CEO of the Center for Regional Strategies, and Tom, who's President and CEO of Goodwill of Western New York. That was a fantastic presentation. We're talking about sustainability a lot these days with BBBRC and a lot of those COVID era grants starting to come to an end. And so I know this is very on top of mind for folks, like how to keep the wheels on the coalition, like y'all have been talking about. I'm going to open it up for questions. Maybe I'll ask one to get us started. Feel free to raise your hand, put a question in the chat, or just come off mute. I think a lot of us are from the BBBRC coalitions. And so this is really meant to be a space where you can ask some of those nitty-gritty questions about, how this relationship came to be and what's working, what's not working, we could take back. So yeah, I had one question just to get us started about how y'all decided to work with an org like CRS. Thinking about the coalitions who got funding from these COVID bills and they're about to end, a lot are worried that the way they've been coordinating is going to come to an end. And do you think this intermediary role is something that's available everywhere? How do people find that group or person? Seems like there might be like increased market for this role since like BBBRC and other grants like showed the importance and the hard work it takes to coordinate across groups. So without the funding, I'm wondering if we'll see more orgs like CRS. And yeah, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll let Laura take that. And I'll just say how Goodwill, decided to work with CRS. That was really easy for me. Laura and I worked together at the University of Buffalo for years and years, and we always bounced off of each other ideas. And when I was first at Goodwill, we were looking for what were the needs of the community. I came right in the middle of COVID, and we were looking at what were the needs of the community post COVID-19. What did our community really need in workforce development? And the first person I went to is Laura. So I'll let Laura, in our community, she's an incredible asset, really important to all this work that's being done. But Laura, I'll let you talk about other intermediaries across the country and how people might think about that.
Yeah, it's funny. People often ask me who our peers are. We are a very unusual animal, and that really I intentionally founded the Center for Regional Strategies as someone who can be a neutral convener, and that's sort of all we do, right? So we don't implement programs ourselves. We are really, again, to intentionally win beneath the wings of other people, and I think it was because I'm an urban planner by trade, and I just saw the need for someone to play that role, and that I came from a philanthropy background. So before I was at the university, I was in foundations, and foundations would always say, you should collaborate more. Why can't you organize yourselves? And we'd say, well, okay, that goes all ways. So we wanted the funders to also collaborate in a way that was also effective. So I think we as a community, there's a scarcity mindset in a place like Western New York. We don't have a massive philanthropy ecosystem here. So funding is limited. So that competitive market for funding and finding programmatic support really sort of catalyzed me to be heart and soul for that kind of work, to say, well, what happens when we rally together and sort of aggregate around something rather than sort of eat each other all day. So so I think part of it was an intentional founding of an organization that's really our core mission.
Thanks a lot. That's a great background.
Yeah, I think too, I would just add one of the things I've noticed with our coalition, I said I've been involved in others that didn't work so well, is the people at their table are the people that are willing and want to, as you said, Laura said earlier, willing and want to do the collaboration, the work together. So sometimes I think in communities, we try to make sure we have every single entity at the table, and then it falls apart versus people are willing to work together being at the table. And I can say of all of our coalition members, I feel, as Laura said, I'm not gonna say we don't ever disagree on something, but I think everybody is in this for the right reason. And everybody is really, really trying to work together for the good of Western New York and our economy and the future generations that are gonna be able to stay here in Western New York, if we have jobs and we have careers for people.
Kristen, question.
Sorry, I hit something in my dock and
Hey,
everything went away.
Kristen,
Hey,
how are you?
good. I wanted to say thank you, you guys, for doing this because it's been really cool listening to how you all have this set up and hearing some of the parallels that are happening here in Georgia, but also some of the regional differences and how you're customizing it to what's going on in Western New York. I was curious. One of the things that we grapple with here in Georgia is connecting these workforce development programs to manufacturers. So like one of our partners is the technical college system, and they're like, hey, manufacturers, we can customize programs to align with some of your technical needs. And it almost comes off as a sales pitch, or not even comes off. I feel like, I don't know. So this has been our sticking point, is connecting with manufacturers. And I was curious how you all wrangle with that, if there's a certain secret sauce that you have figured out in your neck of the woods.
So there's the coalition secret sauce, which Laura can talk about, but Randy, I would maybe ask you to talk about just a little bit of what we do with building relationships with manufacturers. And this is just goodwill centric, but I think others in our coalition do it similar. But why don't you just talk a little bit about our concept of what we're doing?
Absolutely. So, what we have is this dual customer approach, knowing that our business partners, manufacturers, are our customers as much as the individuals that we're serving. And so with that said, we have one dedicated person, an individual whose role is specifically business relations. And she is constantly in contact with our manufacturing partners to identify, what their hiring needs are, to help get that information back to our team, to identify what additional training needs might be of opportunity. And so she really acts as that conduit, right? Bridging that gap. And I think, for our manufacturer partners, they feel like they're being heard, and we're being responsive to their hiring needs by making programmatic adjustments to meet those needs. We also, have an on-site job fair, which is quite helpful, where we'll invite our manufacturing partners on site to interview our graduates. And we do quite a bit of our behind the scenes work in making sure that our applicants, our participants, are good matches for the positions. So doing a lot of that work up front really helps to bring value to that equation for our business partners. And we are just open to the feedback, and we make the adjustments to our curriculum and our process as needed. So it's that ability to be to listen, to be nimble, because I think oftentimes there's some hesitancy to adapt, and actually following through with it has really started to ground those relationships.
Yeah, I think finding the early wins, there's so much skepticism. I think employers have skepticism of what it means to partner with trainers. They've had, they might have had a negative experience, or again, I find that people are really just not very honest with each other about what they really need and sort of what needs to happen out of the training opportunities that we have. And I think we as a coalition always have to deliver for those manufacturers, to just demonstrate it works when we can like have those collaborative moments. And you know, the financial side, sort of, I talked about the innovation fund. You know, when you start to ask them to contribute financially, there's like another dynamic of that. It's a, sort of the sales piece that you were talking about, which I understand, but I think it is finding those ways to be nimble quickly to deliver for them, and really just demonstrate that it works if we can collaborate and work together, and they you know, are getting great candidates out of the process, is just the most magical thing. And then once you have that with some coalition members, and everyone sort of starts to rally around what it means to build those training, those pieces together, and collaborate. So I think it's a trust building thing that sort of has to happen over time. We had a ton of skepticism when we founded Northland Workforce Training Center. Manufacturers were flustered. They were like, we can't navigate all these different programs. And, you know, we had to make it easier for employers. That's part of what the coalition's goal was. So Jess, I saw that Angie had a comment.
Yes.
We're very honest about how hard it is to keep collaborations going, what it means to build trust over time, be very honest with each other, have hard conversations with each other. So just as we can understand the herding cats, that's why it's important to have somebody whose job it is to do the herding, because there's no one organization who can, you know, that's just a compounded thing to have to take on top of what we already do. And again, it's part of why I founded the center, because I was like, ooh, if somebody can play that role all the time of, you know, keeping those communications lines open, and you know, I'm not on everybody's holiday card list, right? Like, it also means that you are negotiating with everyone. I think it means that you, and when, you know, as these changes in employer models, you know, the funding resources that we had and maybe won't have, those are really tough conversations to have as a group, and to say, you know, and having people be honest when they are tripping up on a program where where we can actually trust each other to say like, "Ooh, we tried this and this didn't really work," and how do we like rally around each other and help each other and say we're all part of a greater good. That just takes time. We've had lots of fits and starts with that. I mean, it's, again, I sort of, people always say like, "Oh, you make it sound easy." I don't mean to. It's not easy. Big egos leave big bruises, right? So I think a lot of that is just being humble and sort of coming into those rooms and saying, nothing's perfect, but let's try to be as perfect as we can together. But those are very hard moments to have. When Build Back Better first happened, we had a much bigger coalition, and you know, it didn't all get funded. So I was the one who had to go back to people and say, only certain pieces got funded. You know, it's, and you know, just sort of have those hard conversations. The amazing part to me was when we sort of rallied together and said it was still a really good plan, even if it didn't get funded. So that was what made us go to New York State and to philanthropy to say, and you know, Ralph Wilson Jr. Foundation here, we said this was a great plan. If we could fund all the pieces, this is still a coalition that's ready to do the work. So we still embrace that moment, even though there was a trip up where we, you know, it didn't all work out the way that we originally intended. And some people dropped out of that. Some people were like, we're out. We don't want, like, that was like aggravating. It was a ton of work, and they weren't ready to advance. So we understand that too.
Yeah, I'd say what Laura's kind of not saying super clearly is she's really, really good, and so is Stephen Tucker, at having courageous conversations. We have had some of those meetings of funded partners together, as you alluded to, where maybe a program wasn't on track to meet goals or something, and those conversations take place in a safe space. I think it goes back to what you said about with employers too. There's a level of trust between the coalition partners, and it is courageous conversations, and both her and Stephen Tucker are really good at courageous conversations.
Yeah, that's a job in itself. That takes a lot of energy, and it's not something that people on top of their, other full-time jobs sometimes have the energy and opportunity to navigate. We just did a poll we're going to be talking about sustainability a lot as a community of practice over the next year and trying to understand what people's hangups are, what some bottlenecks and maybe elephants in the room are. And some of the feedback we're getting is like, we've been operating a certain way for the last few years, and, we're going to have some of these really hard conversations about, we did this and what didn't work actually, what programs are not going to be around anymore. And so just having people understand that they're going to be hard conversations. And like you just keep saying, it's important to be brutally honest. It sounds like that's how, yeah, you're building trust among the funders, but also understanding what's in it for everybody. So just thanks a lot. I see Angie nodding. So I hope that was helpful, Angie. We've got just a couple minutes left, probably time for one more question. I just want to make some space. If anybody's got one.
I have a question. This was mentioned a little bit. I'm really curious about how you've gone about soliciting and compiling the learnings. I think I heard you mention interviewing participants. I'm imagining you do some sort of surveying. Can you just talk about that how you approach that, where you put that data and make it actionable?
So we have a set of metrics that we follow as a coalition and some aspirational goals that we also set together as a coalition. Honestly, we didn't do that right at the very beginning. and then we realized, several months in that we needed to do that sort of collaborative goal setting with each other. We were always collecting and sort of monitoring, but without the aspirational goal setting as a collective. So that came, again, we needed a little bit more trust with each other to be able to say, all right, we're all in for these collective goals. We have an MOU with our coalition members that they will be sharing this, data with each other. That's another thing that is a little touchy, right? You're sharing your successes and your metrics with other people who used to be your competitors on a lot of grants, right? You're all going after the same pools of funding. So there's another sort of trust building exercise around that. So when people, join the coalition and are funded through the coalition, you're signing up to sort of share all of that data and research and sort of resources with each other. And then our job with the UB Regional Institute is to produce reports that are publicly back out there that say, here's our metrics, here's how we did, here's what we learned. So one of the exercises that I started when we did Center for Regional Strategies was always talking very publicly about the lessons that we learned, the qualitative piece of it, so that we are documenting it as we go along. And we just put it right in our reports and put it publicly out there, because I think it's important for us to all learn together and sort of, keep egos back there. So I think it's just, it's part of the discipline of sort of how we think and do as a coalition to document things, to be very transparent about what it means to, make tweaks and sort of, share the data, good and bad. So it is part of the discipline that we do. So we share it back out, very publicly.
Thanks, Laura. And thanks, Carolyn, and hi, Carolyn. All right, well, it is 3 o'clock, it's 3:01. I just want to thank you all from Western New York for joining and sharing this information with COP members and more. We had some other folks on the line as well. And again, these are meant to be informative and inform the field of economic development and coalition building. So just thank you. And I appreciate everyone joining, and I just hope everyone has a great afternoon. Thank you.